Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. My guest today is John MacArthur, who is the president and publisher of Harper's magazine. He joins us via satellite from New York. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Donald Trump delivered his first speech before Congress this week, a rather sober speech, if I may say, when you compare it to the fiery words and tweets we've seen coming from the Oval Office since his inauguration a little over a month ago. He called for a new chapter of American greatness, quote unquote. What's your take on Donald Trump's first address to Congress?
Well, my take on it is that the managers, such as they are, because he's very hard to manage, persuaded him that he should try to sound serious and presidential in his first speech. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound cynical, but I almost laughed out loud when he started with Black History Month, because the idea of Donald Trump as a civil rights activist or a somebody who takes civil rights history seriously is just preposterous. So, but it works with a certain number of people, and he made sure he filled the hall with enough black people, and he made reference to a black girl who had beaten the odds and graduated from high school. There was a very, very heavy makeover at work to make him look like a serious person when most of the world thinks of him as a frivolous, eccentric person.
So even if you disagree and you might find this hypocritical, maybe, it seems to have worked because people were wondering which Donald Trump is going to show up on Capitol Hill.
Right, and my feeling is there's really only one Donald Trump, and that's the eccentric, greedy, narcissistic, and angry Donald Trump, which is the Donald Trump that got him elected president. And to try to suddenly come off as statesmanlike is both unconvincing and politically risky. Because if he suddenly becomes statesmanlike in a real way, in a substantive way, and starts asking for compromise, starts trying to work with the Democrats and with the right-wing free trade or Republicans, his base, the people who voted for him, are going to feel betrayed. And we're already seeing the evidence of this on issues like foreign policy. He seems to be pursuing the most conventional, traditional American foreign policy in the Middle East. And he even talked about a martyr, a soldier who was killed, a Navy SEAL who was killed in a fight with a battle with Al-Qaeda and or with ISIS, and that's right out of the Barack Obama playbook. So that's going to sound, for the people who hoped that Trump was going to have a real rupture, he's really going to tear it with the former administration, that's got to be a disappointment.
But that's got to be a reassurance for people like you, who, let's put it this way, do not really like Donald Trump.
Well, yes and no, because in my heart of hearts, I was kind of hoping, as much as I was opposed to Trump and horrified by his election, I thought, well, now that he's president, maybe he will do something radically different on foreign policy, for example, or on trade. But it doesn't look like he's going to do it. And this is going to cause great political instability. You have to remember that the establishment of the Republican Party, and he is putatively the president from the Republican Party, the establishment led by Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, and Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, hates Trump, or they hated him during the campaign. And ideologically, they're violently opposed to his positions on trade, particularly on free trade and protectionism. So if he seems to be giving in, conceding, and on immigration, because they like the immigration system just fine the way it is, because lots of cheap labor gets into the United States, illegal labor that can be hired by wealthy Republican businessmen. If he allows Ryan and McConnell to really direct the legislation, he's going to lose his credibility with the people who voted for him. The blue-collar people who thought he was going to come save them are going to feel very disappointed.
Right, but the tone was maybe softer or more sober. But then on the substance, trying to probably speak to those voters you mentioned, he did say that he would build a quote great wall with Mexico. He did talk about basically revamping the Obamacare system and so on. But do you think that he will abandon this? That maybe on immigration he will maybe soften his approach, saying, okay, maybe on merits we can bring people in? Because if you look at the substance, it's not that different than from what he says or tweets on a regular basis.
Well, earlier in the day, in a meeting with, I think, with some other media, with television people, he signaled a willingness to compromise on immigration and legalize a lot of issue blank legalization for a lot of illegal immigrants, which would be a good thing because it would bring them into the American system. They'd start paying taxes, payroll taxes, and their wages would go up.
Obama was never able to do so because the Republicans were not.
Right. Republicans didn't want that. But the Republicans now would be faced, and I'm talking about the establishment Republicans like Ryan, would be faced with a decision. Do we want to let Trump look statesmanlike, or do we want to stick to our ideological guns and our exploitation, by the way, of illegal labor, and refuse him this legislation? Then there's going to be an internal battle in the Republican Party because a broad legalization of a lot of illegal immigrants is something that a lot of Democrats would support. So Trump has got to make a decision, and I'm not sure whether he's capable of making such a decision, whether he's going to plow his own path on certain issues, immigration, trade, and so on, that upset the Republican leadership, or whether he's going to try to be more normal and get along with the Republican leadership. So, and this is absolutely unclear at this point. I can't say. Nobody knows.
Right. I mean, there's another plan which he talked about, to be fair, during the campaign, which he reiterated, and something that the Democrats have pushed and successfully until now, but could logically also approve, is this $1 trillion infrastructure plan. He says it's going to be the biggest program of national rebuilding since Eisenhower. Do you think that indeed this could maybe be something that not so much the Republicans but the Democrats could agree upon? Or do you think that because there's such a difference, there's such bad blood, I should say, between the Democrats and Donald Trump, that this is not something that's feasible?
No, the Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and the people on the left wing of the Democratic Party would have to vote for a massive infrastructure program. The question is going to be whether it's direct federal spending or whether it's tax credits to favored corporations. If he's just going to give tax credits to his favored corporations, you're going to have an argument from the left against it. But if it is a genuine infrastructure public works program, a lot of Democrats will support it, and a lot of right-wing Republicans will oppose it on the grounds that it's going to enlarge the deficit, and on ideological grounds that it's a bad thing in general for the government to spend money.
Right.
This should be left to the private sector and so on. One of the things he never talks about, by the way, with the border fence is the cost, which is vastly greater.
Well, he said Mexico would pay for it.
No. Well, but the money, you're going to have to pay the property owners along the border using eminent domain, and that pushes the cost of building the fence, if he's really going to do it, closer to $100 billion. So he's just lying about that. Nobody's talking about how much land they're going to have to purchase from these people who are real independent types who aren't going to like having the government forcing them to build a fence on their land. So these are things details that Trump doesn't talk about. He also doesn't talk about the minimum wage, which I think is something significant. If he was serious about trying to help American working people, because he sounded like he was trying to be serious yesterday, he would have brought up the fact that the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage in this country, has not increased since the George W. Bush administration in 2006, which is something incredible. The Democrats never did it, never were able to do it, or never really pushed hard enough for it. He didn't talk specifically about wages in a proactive way. All he talked about was, if we slow down immigration, wages will go up. And I guess what he means is that if you have fewer illegal workers working for $3 an hour, you'll have more Americans working for the minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. But $7.25 an hour is not enough to live on in this country. You have to be on food stamps, on welfare. It's absurd.
Okay, John MacArthur, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much for your take on Donald Trump's first address to Congress in Washington. And thank you for watching this edition of The Interview on France 24.
People and Profit, presented by Stephen Carroll.
Business news is not about numbers, nor percentages and statistics. Business news is about people and how we live our lives. People and Profit goes beyond numbers to analyze how the global flow of money and profits shape our world. Intelligent and accessible, the show cuts across business, economics and politics.
People and Profit, on France 24 and France24.com.